We're on. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Uru Labs podcast from Bengaluru. Ever complained about how our cities are, how bad your commute is? You will get to hear from people who are working to solve these problems in their own way. So this is your weekly soapbox for urban sustainability. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos. I am Satya Shankaran with Nirav Kodolikar. And today on the show, we have Shahid Hashmi, a public policy and corporate affairs professional who has spent the past few years in the fast-growing shared mobility and last-mile delivery startup. Welcome to the show, Shahid. Nice to have you on. Let's talk today about the shared mobility sector itself. I am seeing far fewer shared mobility options for commuters on the road these days, especially post-pandemic. And in Bengaluru, I've been going around and the number of vehicles that are available on the street seems to be slowly disappearing. Shahid, is this the end of ride sharing as we know it?
Well, I don't say this is like the end of ride sharing. What I see is that it's a very natural business. It's more of consolidation that is taking place. The corrections that are needed once you run a business after 2, 3, 4 years, right? Situation was quite different pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic things have changed, and every sector has a certain changes, including this sector also. So what is happening is that there is a consolidation that is happening. Point number one. Point number two, there is also a little bit of transformation that is happening, right? There is a change in business model. There is a change in the kind of asset that you use for shared mobility. I think that's one of the reasons that you see a lot of, less number of options on the road. Also, geographically also, right? It's understood that it's not something that can be suited in every area, in every locality, right? It needs to be very specific. So it's more like concentrating your business only on that particular area rather than spread over entire city. So maybe that could also be another reason that you see a very less option. And I think this would continue for a few more years where you will, you see things getting streamlined.
I was wondering that even before we get into the details of ride sharing, could you actually tell us what shared mobility is and just speak on the difference between ride sharing and ride hailing?
Well, I'll explain you what is defined in the regulatory framework. Sure. So you have two schemes under which you get a license. This is a 1997 regulatory rules. One is called bike taxi, other one is called bike rental. Right? Now, bike taxi is what you call ride hailing, where you have a rider who picks you up, who drops you. So there's a different section that you get a license for bike taxi. And there is bike rental, where you do a self-ride. So you go, you pick up your own bike, and then you are the one who is riding that bike. So these are two basic model, what we in a common language, we also call it ride hailing and ride sharing. So each of this have a same 1997 rules, but more general differentiation for the people to know, maybe a common man, is that when you see a black plate with a yellow number printed on it, that's bike rental. Right? When you see a yellow number plate with a black number printed on that, it's bike taxi. Okay, so that's the basic difference between this, both what we call bike rental as well as bike taxi.
So one is self-driven and one is something that you sort of...
Yeah, for one you have rider, for one you are self-driven.
Awesome. So actually coming back to a point that I picked on when you initially gave us the summary, which is you said that there has been a change in the underlying asset used by the shared mobility company. Could you speak more on that and maybe tell us what it was before and what the change is now?
Well, see, when it started, the option that we have were IC engines, that we call it petrol vehicles, right? And that time there was always a concern about EV vehicles because it was evolving. You're talking about 5 years before, right? The battery swap model was very at nascent stage. So they were concerned about the charging, the kind of length the bike might go. So that time, no one thought about that EV could also be a part of shared mobility, right? But over the years, parallelly what you have seen is that there has been a rapid transformation of the EV vehicle itself. So within EV also you have two kinds now. One is high powered, the other one is low powered, right? High powered does require for you to have a license, a registration, etc., etc. Low powered, you don't need to have any license or any registration. Now, me as a business, right, I would always want my bike to get booked as soon as possible, right, without much of issues in terms of, I don't know, KYC or not. So what has happened? There has been a transformation from first this petrol vehicle to EV vehicle, and now EV vehicle to low powered EV vehicle. Why? It's easier. You don't require a lot of KYC, something like license and all. It's low powered also, so it's regarded as a non-motorized transport, less than 25 kilometer per hour. So it's actually considered as cycle. I mean, to be honest, legally it's considered as cycle, the low powered EV. So there has been that change, and then battery swap system has basically matured. Charging stations have come up, right? So that's why you see a lot of companies transiting towards the EV. Then the government support also, right? Each state has its own EV target. So when you buy an EV bike, right, there are also certain subsidies and support from the government side. So that's why you see assets being completely moving towards the electric vehicle, right? It's low cost, can have an affordable ride. From pay per kilometer, I have reached to pay per minute. That's another easy thing for me, right? So that's why you see this transformation moving towards EV now.
So this has the pay per kilometer changed because EVs have come in, or even in the fossil fuel vehicles you had the pay per minute model. Was it because of the EV that the models itself changed?
Yeah, because the pay per minute works better in shared mobility than pay per kilometer, right? Because let's see, I want to go from point A to point B. That's hardly like 4 kilometer. How much I will be able to earn as a business? But ideally speaking, that guy who's going from point A to point B would be at least spending like 20-22 minutes, probably going there, picking up certain grocery and coming back, just for the sake of example. So that's why pay per minute is better option for shared mobility than pay per kilometer. And in EV, it's very difficult to come on to that that costing of pay per kilometer, because it's charged. So how will you basically calculate it, right? You cannot charge how much the battery is getting discharged and all. So when you talk about EV, the most feasible option is always pay per minute model, right? It's much easier for even the calculation of the business unit economics.
Has everybody already switched to EVs? Is anybody even trying to do fossil fuel shared mobility anymore? At least the ride sharing part of it. I don't know what the ride hailing is still there, but
see, few of them are in a stage of transition. Like for an example, a company like Vogo, they are moving from petrol to EV. Right? Some of them have completely moved to EV, like Bounce. Bounce is a separate, different model altogether now. It's OEM plus shared mobility kind of thing, right? When you talk about the petrol, it's more of these guys who rent you the bigger motorcycle, not for shared mobility kind, right? If you want to travel to Ladakh or long rides, so you have this Royal Enfield, right? You have this bigger bike, so they are still on that, your petrol vehicles. Most of them have moved towards EV because it's you can actually make it affordable when you have an EV.
So from where we see all the big players like Bounce and Vogo, we used to have all these petrol vehicles out there, and in those days I think petrol stealing was a big issue with consumer behavior, but having EVs, has that changed? They can't steal petrol anymore, but what's going on there?
But see, they cannot steal petrol anymore, but there are still a lot of stuff to steal, right? There's still a battery to be for you. There are vehicle parts, there are headlights, there are wheels, there are mirrors. I mean, it's a combination of multiple parts, right? But something that has worked here is the evolution of IoT devices, right? Today, a vehicle which is IoT integrated behaves more like a, I can say a human type. So, in a simple example, I see if someone is trying to pull something out from the vehicle reports that, as a ping or as an alarm, what we call, abuse also. Right? If someone is trying to abuse the vehicle in any way, the vehicle starts giving that back-end alerts to the system. So this is still evolving. It's not perfect, but it's also not that bad. So you are able to safeguard. Then battery with a GPS system is something that has come into picture quite recently. So you know that once your battery moves away from your asset, right? It's you get an alert okay, why it has not been either put it into the charging station. So things are evolving in that fashion, right? That's why you see all of this swapping, battery swapping business. They run on this particular system that you have your GPS, IoT within the battery also, so that you get to know the battery needs to be replaced immediately. Someone has pulled it out, has not put it inside the station. It starts giving the alert, and that entity works out. So that is still there. It would take some more time, right? Because technologies are not that real time. There are still a lag of few minutes. Sometime it could be few hours also. I think, but that over a period of time, things will get better. But there is a certain percentage that cannot be solved, and even the industry guys know that that percentage keeps happening. If someone just damages your bike for no reason, and people do that. I mean, you being so closely working with the public transportation system, you see people damaging bus stops or a seat or anything. People do that. A very small percentage of them. So that keeps happening. It just it will get settled over a period of time.
So yeah, I agree with you. I've seen a lot. I remember these vehicles that were the ICE vehicles that were going around. They were they tried to run it over the median and on footpaths, and they literally abuse these things. I think consumer behavior on the long run needs to be. I think it's a lot better than some other countries, but I don't know. Right? I mean, is this consumer behavior really bad now? Is this a small percentage? Is it worrisome? And do you think, on one hand, the companies, right, sharing companies can educate the consumers better, or is it not worth it for the amount of vandalism that we've had?
See,
What are the patterns you see? Is it different? Is it different in some cities more than other cities, or is it the same everywhere? What do you see?
Yeah. See, point number one, companies do work on mitigating the consumer behavior. There is one way of there is a certain fine for you if you do basically damage when you are running my vehicle. The other part is that the percentage that we are talking is very small and is very limited to and it's common. I mean, whatever you do, even if you go to a government hospital or a government office, right, or anyway, there is always a certain percentage that will always be there. So it has reduced a lot. Comparatively within the cities, yeah, it varies between the cities and cities. For an example, it depends on the kind of area that you're operating, right? It could be anything. It could be, school children doing for the sake of, see, they don't understand what they're doing sometimes, right? They just do it because it's fun. I mean, we have, probably in our time, we might have broken glasses. So they are breaking vehicles now. It's as simple as it. They don't understand that it's, they're damaging something. So it depends upon locality, city-wise, right? It will improve. It will improve. But I think a certain, as I told you before also, percentage will always be there. Another thing that has helped is the kind of that whole CCTV revolution, right? Every 1 year. There's a report yesterday, that talks about 68% of the Bangalore is covered with CCTV. So I think the more these things improve, you will see a less of, consumer damaging in certain asset.
Fair enough. On the other hand, when you see the companies themselves looking at evolving models, you talked about IoT being a big improvement that has led to better tracking of assets, better tracking of where your vehicle is. Again, coming back to the question of why it went down and they're still experimenting. Is it still in an experimental phase? What exactly is preventing the scale up? Because I was just looking at some of the numbers they say, right? India's shared mobility sector could see 15 crore users by 2025 is what the Red Sea report says. Then people are talking about the shared mobility market itself valued at around $1,000 million in 2019 and expected to grow at a CAGR of 56.8%. That's a massive amount of growth they are expecting, but it's not visible on the ground. Because I'm asking the same question again. If it's not visible on the ground, what is preventing that scale up from happening? Is it just capital infusion that is the problem? Is it the ability to deploy assets? Operational issues are the problem? Or the third part is the regulatory piece? How do you apportion?
See, there are multiple ways to look at it. When you say why you don't see still at a scale, is that shared mobility does not work only on the idea of shared mobility. You also require a lot of supporting mechanism. For an example, let's see if I'm moving from a point A to point B to point C, whether it's first mile, whether it's last mile. What I also need is a preferential parking system, right? where there is a certain dedicated space given to a shared mobility company, so that it becomes feasible for the people to pick up that point, and it has to be very close from where they are getting down or from where they want to pick up it. That's one part of it. That's one part of the scale.
Why do you need that preferential? I just want to ask that question. Why do you need a
So for
preferential
example,
parking? Why
let's
can't
say,
you just...
shared mobility works on the idea that I pick it and I drop it, and I should be have that that independence to pick it from anywhere and drop it from anywhere. Now, when I don't get a preferential parking, I am a consumer. I always feel that if I take this vehicle, where would I drop it? So I either try to drop it in no parking, which is not at all good, for the for the city, for whatever the reason. So there needs a certain preferential parking, like you need to have a dedicated place so that people can go there, and it's also easier. And this dedicated place should be very close. It cannot be 1 kilometer apart, right? People cannot walk for 1 kilometer and then pick up something and then go. So it should be something between that 100 to 100 meters. So that's from the infrastructure point of view. The second point is that at the scale, what we need to know is that anything cannot be limited to tier 1 cities, the capital cities, right? We need to understand that if you are looking at a scale of the numbers that you're talking about, then it includes the whole of the population, right? And the whole of the population doesn't stay in the only bigger cities. So now how would you put this in tier 2 cities? How would you bring operation efficiency in tier 2, tier 3 cities? Right? Will it actually work? Right? It might have worked in Bangalore because there is a huge IT sector. In Hyderabad also there is something. There are people coming from outside doing job who doesn't want to own a vehicle. But will it work in tier 2, tier 3 cities? Because there the distances are very small. Right? The whole character of a small city is very different. If I am walking, someone would definitely drop me. Okay, come, I'll drop you for, right? And 4-5 kilometers, 6 kilometer for tier 2, tier 3 city is actually nothing. It's just, the city gets over within like 7-8 kilometers itself. So I think that also matters. How are we going to take that challenge to make it feasible in smaller cities? That's why we don't see the scale. The third part is there was a time that this was scaling up, and then the pandemic came. Now, after pandemic, what you also saw that there is a change in the whole working behavior of employees, right? There is hybrid option given, there is work from home option given, right? Between work from home and work from office. Now, when people are not going to office, then a little bit, effect of that. I don't say a little bit. A big effect of that will always be there on shared mobility, right? Then we are ignoring a very big part, that is the rise of gig economy. Things getting doorstep delivery. Now, if I have to go for a 3 kilometer to buy a milk packet or a biscuit packet, and if that coming to my home in within 20 minutes, why would I, book a ride, take the effort of going it out? So that could also be one of the reasons that, you see that the scaling has reduced a little bit. The third point is post-pandemic, you see that there is always, everywhere you see the issue of capital. So I think what companies are trying to do is that concentrate the business and work on the profitability, right? And then again, look for an expansion, because initially when you grow everywhere, it's fine, right? We were also there in 8-9 cities. Now we have reduced to 3-4 cities, right? Why? Because we want to first consolidate. Now the model is more or less perfect. The tech is streamlined. Now we want to improve our operation efficiency, concentrate on one area, do our entire effort on that. And then maybe can replicate that once things become more normal.
So that brings to an interesting question. We'll come back to the regulatory part a little later. But now you said after the end commuter who was traveling more has reduced quite a bit and also changed models and everything like that. And obviously the milk still needs to be get delivered to the person, right? And somebody else is delivering it. It's not that person going and fetching it. So there is a gig economy worker who's using a vehicle. Are they using shared modes instead? Because I see some companies like Yulu who have completely pivoted because the demand was there. There were more gig economy workers coming to rent those vehicles and using it. Because I know for a fact that a lot of delivery executive doesn't want to own an EV for lack of a secondary market and cost, initial upfront cost and all that. They are looking to rent and lease more often. Isn't that a market to go after? How has that been shaping up? Because some people seem to have pivoted.
Well, I was coming to that anyways. Good that you asked. So as Neerav was also asking how the model is evolving. So initially what we thought was there would be a set of employees who will take our vehicle to office who are, from outside the city. Then we saw students taking these vehicles to the college, because they are in a different city. Now the next phase that we saw was these gig workers, they do not want to own the vehicle because End of the day, it's that gig economy that is there in their mind, right? They want to do it. They don't consider it as a permanent job. They want to do it probably for a month, 6 months, 8 months, a year. And when I do that, it doesn't make any sense for me to buy a entire new vehicle and then whether it's EMI or upfront, whatever it is, it's still a costly affair. So they started taking this vehicle, right? They started, taking this shared mobility vehicles where we call mobility as a service. There are companies that are offering you the whole idea itself. So there is something like Yulu where they collaborate with where any delivery executive can book the vehicle for a day, for a 15 days, for 30 days. But there are now companies that have come which are directly collaborating with Zomato, Swiggy and offering them, look, we will give you bikes for your delivery executives. If you want to onboard delivery executive, condition that he doesn't have a bike, we will give you the bike. Let's have a, that kind of arrangement where, in his earning, we get our, money back. So that model is also on the rise. So obviously, yeah, these, gig workers, executives, they are taking bikes. But Satya, what problem happens here is that this is not a complete shared mobility model where people take your bike for a 15 days, 30 days. We can call it as a subscription model, right? But not a shared mobility model, right? I want my bike to have more uses per day, right? The more people should take it, the better it's for whatever the reason the shared mobility is there. We want to decongest roads, right? We want to make it affordable. But when people take it for 15 days, 30 days, it's nothing that it's something that just you are changing the EMI model to something else. End of the day, it's again same thing. Someone will keep it for this 30 days, someone will keep us for that 50 days. But obviously, we cannot stop it. It's on rise. A lot of companies, even the bigger brands like, Domino's, Pizza Huts, they are also trying to bring EV for the delivery executive because it helps them, to be very climate conscious also. Delivery executive get the vehicle, the company gets the delivery executive. So that model is also working there. Right? And this is what we call B2B model actually, right? Where it's completely running on subscription-based model for a 10-day, 1 day, 30 days, whatever it is. And since there is no concern of range now, it's going on well.
So I think that comes back to this question of the subscription versus true bike sharing and all of those things. So let's ask that question, is the business unit profitable at all, right? Is there still profitability or is it far away? Of course, it will come at some point in time when the volumes pick up, but there's a lot of work to do for that. If it is not, would you nitpick on subscription versus this now? Of course, like I mentioned in the PBS, this thing also, asset utilization, making it used more often is always a good thing. But failing which, if your asset utilization or sweating of the asset is low in the public space, you might as well say, yeah, let something come out of it for now, even in a subscription model, because at the end of the day, you need to have it usable. And also taking off on your point, I have noticed that a lot of the food business, especially, and the delivery business are beginning to own their own fleet or even long-term leases on their own fleet, so that they are not reliant on being able to find a publicly available motorbike or scooter or low-powered EV. Because if it's not there, then the delivery goes for a toss. I've seen some of these guys squatting on the EVs which are lying around. I mean, they stop the rental, but they're just sitting on it so that somebody doesn't pick it up. And then when they need to go, they just... So that kind of squatting on the asset is also happening. But coming back to the B2B model itself, is that going to help you? And using that, is end consumer ride sharing even going to be profitable in the long run? Do you see that happening? Or will everybody be around till then?
See, profitable for any startups, with this so-called impactful ideas, it's a very long dream. There are hardly, I don't know if I may be wrong, but I think Uber did just registered profitability in 2020. That's all, and they have been there, in the industry for more than a decade now. Right, Lyft, the same concept. So profitability will take time. For an example, B2B subscription we spoke about, right? Now the question is that if every delay, right, where is the end of it? How far how many? Then the whole idea of reducing the number of vehicles, I don't think so would be that correct. As again, that the other problem that you said, that people blocking it because they want to again use it. So it now depends how it will go from here in terms of as a B2B model, and even as a B2C model is not that bad. It's need to evolve. Like now, these companies are integrated with the public transport. So metro authorities have quite an open mind to give you a dedicated space. Even bus, for that public transport, they are also now looking at models. What in Mumbai and other places, they will give you last mile connectivity space or near to the bus stop or anything. So I mean, it is so how that's going to how are you going to integrate with the public transport, whether it's metro, whether it's bus, or whether it's a local train.
That brings me to an interesting question on the public transport, right? Today, people are most, I don't know how you need to tell me if this the split of people using it complete as a complete trip, right? You take it, you do your entire work and come back, like if it's a delivery worker or a consumer who is going from home to office, doing it completely, versus how many of them are using it for public transport. What is the general split you see? Is this a true last mile that they consider as, or is it you're seeing more of complete trips being done in these vehicles?
See, as far as my experience in people taking bike till metro station and then using from there, the metro, it has increased drastically, right? It has increased a lot, right? So you see that increase. So I don't know how to split that percentage. I don't know how to calculate that. But what you see is that there is an increase of that. That shared mobility is now acting as a feeder to public transport, right? But there is also point A to B. There is also in between point A1 I require. Now there is where the concerns start. Now, so if the public transport authority is ready to provide me space, for a shared mobility, the next picture comes here is the local municipality now. The local corporation. They should also give me a space in that between. You understood what I'm talking about? For a metro station
Hmm.
from my home, there needs to be some place in between, right, where there is to be another parking place, and there are some areas that are too big, too deep. You look at that. Uh, I know that authorities are trying to do it, work it out, but again, you know it very well that parking itself is another big
Hmm.
problem now, right? There is always the stocks of charging people for don't give free parking kind of concepts. Now in that again, where will you bring planning where I take a shared mobility, go to a metro, then take a bus, then again get a drop and then come back. So this integration needs to be that what we call right planning, and quite you are aware of that. A lot of these apps now do offer that. How do you plan your ride, right? So once that cycle is set for area wise, for an office wise, then people will stick to it, because everyone people do not want to change routes or the way they travel when they go to office.
Yeah, like you said, there always seems to be a last mile. Even to get to those parking spots that are not available to you now, there is a small amount of distance, which seems to be quite big right now because of the lack of allocation of spaces that is there. So there is always ending up to be a last mile. It might be a smaller last mile than actually getting to the metro, but it can be quite significant. So this brings me to another question that I always thought of. If public transport needs to succeed, metro needs to succeed or move more passenger, or bus needs to succeed, or the suburban train or the local trains need to succeed, they need to bring more passenger. And these kind of modes, like whether it is ride hailing or ride sharing, these kind of modes provide, and bicycling and walking and all these things, right, at different distances, provide the people and revenue for the public transport. This is like I mentioned in the last show also, is that if this is the uh, trunk line, there has to be your arms and limbs that need to connect to the house, because ultimately you are competing with private vehicles, where once one gets in a private vehicle, they end up completing the whole trip and the public transport really doesn't benefit. What kind of an arrangement should public transport agencies, like whether it is the local train agencies, whether it is the suburban train agencies, the metro corporation, the bus corporations, how should they look at these kind of last mile modes? Of course, considering that a significant portion would come, and if you are actually feeding the metro, it's revenue for them, it's revenue for you. Shouldn't there be something that needs to be worked out financially? What kind of incentives do you think they can provide and they should provide? Because it's a win-win for both.
Any sort of public transport should not consider shared mobility as a competition. They should consider as a complementary, part of the effort. If they consider that shared mobility is going to compete with our public transport, then the whole structure breaks very badly, and we don't know where it's going to end. So it all congestion wise or whatever it is, it's the public transport always the best option. There is no denying fact that. How do shared mobility complement to that is that needs to be worked out. Now for 12, whether it's cycle, whether it's shared mobility, they have, given that particular space for you to have your vehicle there so that people can pick up. Can you incentivize someone if he connects out, will take for the sake of that incentives that they can create a loop out of it, right? So, and it's not difficult by the way, Satya. I mean, UPI has given that example where for us. So overall, he saves a certain amount.
No, I think it's a very good point, right? So myself and Nirav and the team are also building this on the Altmo platform. You can today track your last mile and be able to validate. These are validated trips that you go into the metro. Of course, with the common mobility card, they should open that up. I think for players like you, the shared mobility operators, to integrate with the common mobility card and use that as a payment system. There's a lot of data related questions that come up, because the data sharing policies are not in place by any of these transport operators. So they are unwilling to share data, they are unwilling to work with operators to kind of do this incentivization structure. And I think that is the next step. I agree with what you said. Getting the parking going is a big step, because that is, for metro also it has become difficult to get parking spaces. They do have good structures, but at scale they are not able to give, and they should prioritize smaller IPT modes like what you the industry brings on the shared mobility side. Bicycle parking, and in lieu of car parking, they should, whatever little space is available, if they make it available for the shared mobility modes, I think that will be more useful. And I think there is a need to work with the transport agencies and come to some kind of a consensus on incentivization, because this last mile integration is the biggest challenge for optimal utilization of metro systems. They cost 500, 700 crores per kilometer, that those metro systems, and I don't think the kind of traffic they are carrying is worth it, frankly speaking. And if the metro authorities cannot today spend that extra few crores, right, after spending 700 crores, you can't put 5 crores more to make these last mile work. I think they are missing the forest for the trees. I'd like to be very frank about that with all these authorities. And trying to work with more innovators is very useful. I, as an innovator, feel that they are not working with too many, they are not willing to experiment a lot more with innovators to see which solution fits better. Some of them are, some of them are quite closed in the larger cities. So basically, we see, Shahed, is the ride sharing market seems to be in a place where it's looking to revive itself with different models and different asset types and everything. People are upgrading, and the business models are also trying to figure out how do you stay in the business. What is your future outlook for this? I know the regulation part of it seems to be okay for now, except that I do know from many people telling me is that it can be quite difficult dealing with the regulators, because they are also new to some of these things. And the appetite for them to give a little more rope to innovators is not that great. So I think they also need to start looking at encouraging more innovators to come over and try some of these things, at the same time keeping a leash, because there seem to be a lot of violations, like you said, on the ground, and a lot of technicalities to be ironed out. But broadly, ignoring the fact that all these need to be fixed, what are the timelines you're looking at? Do you think many of the existing players will survive long enough for this to continue?
Well, what I see is that there will be more of consolidation now, right?
Hmm.
That's one part. Uh, I also see that a certain new inventions or innovations, what I say, are happening in the asset type also, right? You see fat bikes coming into picture. If you are building a low powered for a delivery guy, then you build it around keeping his movement in that. So it's not like for you for a normal customer to take. It's only for that delivery guy to take. So assets are going to evolve. Obviously the whole tech is getting more sorted, it's getting more better, new thing. uh, That I see that one part is that there would be a consolidation. Uh, then I think the few new models are going to come up very soon, where you see that there are companies who are directly now collaborating, with what we call as an fleet operators. So
Hmm.
I provide, mobility as a service, right? You just hire me my entire fleet just for doing your job, right? Your delivery, whatever it is. So that is something that is going to happen. Rest things I think would remain same, more or less. But I think regulatory wise, something that we miss out is that government is also trying to support as much as it can. Delhi government recently announced that they're going to allow some 1,500 bikes. I think a year back, this was there. BMRCL, CMRL or HMRL, even in Mumbai, corporations are now also taking this model seriously. Ahmedabad recently had a tender for last mile connectivity parking places. So you see, it's getting more support from the government side. Obviously, I'm not got that okay with an idea of a tender. I'm more about just charge per bike per operator, because tender again creates that cost efficiency problem. Uh, multiple people competing. Government is benefited there, no doubt, but for the industry, it's very difficult sometimes. So you see that model also where you see a government support. Ahmedabad is a good example. I think even as you know, Dalton Bangalore has also given certain what you call SMMS, that shared micro
Hmm.
mobility space concept. So that is what we are going to see it over a period of time. Let's see how it. I mean, more get evolved with integrated with public transport and all in future.
So overall positive with consolidation in the picture
Yeah.
in the picture. I don't know who you're going to consolidate into. Who's going to buy and consolidate is important. It could be.
We'll
Is
see.
it a?
I'll give you a very good example. Ola
Hmm.
and Uber, right?
Hmm.
There are so many players. When we look at the whole taxi came, there was shared mobility. I was able to travel to Koramangala for 60 rupees. I remember that, in a car. You see, now I doubt that is going to happen, right? But what I see is that end of the day, some two three players will survive, because once the market is used to it, the market will fetch them that demand, for them to survival. Whatever you say, profitability or whatever it is, four or five bigger players, depends who is going to, do that change innovation faster and become that bigger player. So it's going to be that kind of idea where you see uh, consolidation and few of them surviving very strongly, supporting this idea. We never knew that there would be a time where people OEM will come with an idea of subscription model, right? We never had
Hmm.
that thing. It's happening. There are OEM that are giving you bike also and a charging station integration also. So I think that's where we see that consolidation will happen, and some of the players will survive, as a solution for both last mile and first mile.
And hopefully there'll be no more new people coming in as well. On that really positive note, thanks Shahid for coming and sharing your thoughts on this platform. I'd like to remind the viewers that we also have a CFAM newsletter out every week, cfam.substack.com. I'll put it out in the show notes. And like, subscribe, watch, and share these videos. I'll have more interesting people, and maybe Shahid will come back when times are better and talk to us a little more about shared mobility and how it is going. Let's see if some consolidation happens and something else happens interesting. He'll come back on the show and tell us more about it. Thanks, Shahid,
Yeah.
for being on the show, man.
Thanks a lot, Satya. Thanks a lot, Nirav.